walk. So there was first and second with 2 outs, but he got his third strikeout of the inning to earn his second save as a Chicago Cub. And it was a good win for the Cubs. John Lester got his 8th win of the season. Giolito gave up 6 earned. He now has given up 12 earned in 8 1/3 innings pitched against the Cubs, as his season ERA jumped up to a 3.15 mark. Also, Garcia finished this one with another 2 walks and a run scored, as he was putting together good at-bats in this one. Let's fast forward now to today's game, as the Cubs unfortunately lost this one by a score of 3-1. And not one player in the Cubs lineup had more than 1 hit after a couple days where we saw the bats put together, great at-bats that we haven't seen in a couple weeks in the 11-3 victory over the Pirates, and then the Game 1 victory, the 6-3 W over the White Sox. But today, it was Kyle Hendricks making his second start off the IL, going up against Ivan Nova, who's just killed us across his whole career. And yet again today, back on June 18th, I think Nova threw 5 1/3 with 1 run given up. Today he was even better with 5 2/3, 5 hits, no runs, 4 strikeouts. And their bullpen was good too, besides a Robel Garcia homer in the 7th inning. Their bullpen was good as they held us scoreless the rest of the way. Hendricks wasn't very efficient and good in this one. He had 86 pitches through 4 innings, and he was pulled. He also got tagged with the loss. He's now 7-7 on the years. He gave up 4 hits off 2 earned runs, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. Brad Brock gave up a solo homer to Jose Abreu, as he only recorded 1 out and gave up a run in the 5th inning, as the White Sox led 3-0 after 5. They got on the board in the 4th inning as it was scoreless through the first 3. Eloy Jimenez, the former Cub, hit a 2-run homer, a go-ahead 2-run homer off Hendricks in the 4th. And then it was 3-0 the rest of the way until the 7th. Robel Garcia hit his second homer of the week, his second Major League homer. That's up on my Instagram. If you check out at the Cubs Wave on Instagram, I just posted that here on Sunday evening. Robel Garcia's home run video for my post-game recap. So check that out if you want to see it. It was a very good hit, and one of the few positives in this one for the Cubs. As like I said, no one had more than 1 hit in this one. Jose Abreu had 3 hits on the other side. And then Alex Colomé, I think that's how you say it, he saved his 20th game of this season to close this one out for the White Sox. And they're surprisingly pretty happy with where they're at. Only 2 games under 500 at the break. While the Cubs, on the other hand, just 4 games over 500 yet. We have to be a little bit grateful that Milwaukee has really done poor, along with St. Louis the last month and a half, much like the Cubs, but at least we're still in first place. So looking at that, I'm going to go into now the NL Central. We'll look at the standings first. Let's see here. As I know, it's getting very close in the NL Central. All 5 teams are in contention come the All-Star break, which hasn't been the case the last. I can't imagine the last time the Reds were, I don't know, probably 8 games or less behind first place at the break, as they're just 4.5 games behind, only 5 games under 500. I know I talked about this in the offseason, and it was one of my predictions that the Reds would finish around 500, maybe a little under. That prediction holds to be true right now, and with the way the Cubs are playing, I didn't think this is the way the Cubs, Milwaukee, and even St. Louis would play so far, as I thought, not that the Reds would be in contention for the division, but that they'd be a decent team. But now that we're all of a sudden kind of playing like a barely above average MLB team, anything is possible, and the Reds are just 4.5 back. Then you look at Pittsburgh, they're only 1 game under 500, and all of a sudden, after their series against us, winning 3 of 4 at home at PNC Park in Pittsburgh, they're only 2.5 out of first, and we have a big series coming up against them starting on Friday to open up the second half, as we'll need to get revenge with them just 2.5 games behind us. St. Louis is 500 at the break through 88 games at 44 apiece in the win-loss column. They're 2 games behind. And then Milwaukee, they lost again today to Pittsburgh. They came back, but Pittsburgh bested them by a score of 6-5 on Sunday afternoon at PNC Park. as Milwaukee stays a half game behind us to end the first half. Another glaring weakness in the Cubs game as well is 18-27 away so far on the season. 29-16 at home is great, but when you look at it, we're not going to be playing a whole lot of big, season-deciding games at home towards the end of the year, and especially in October when you get into, home field advantage. Obviously, Game 1 is huge and Game 2 is huge. Obviously, we'll have big games at home at Wrigley if we get in a playoff series, especially if it's 7 games. But most likely, we'll be having to go out on the road in those hard Game 7s. So, win or die situation, being 18-27 on the road is by far the worst record in the NL for any NL leading team. And it's down there with some of the worst teams, actually, in the Central. So that's not great for the Cubs. However, like I said, we have to be grateful that at least we're still in first place. So now I want to go through, we'll do the whole NL Central's week in a little bit, but I wanted to go through, I know I've mentioned a little bit about the stats for the Cubs the last 7 days for these hitters, but I want to go through it a little bit more. Like I mentioned before, Chris Bryant with the best week average-wise for the Cubs, along with, I believe, the best slugging number, on-base percentage number, and his OPS was second on the team this week, just behind Robel Garcia, but he only played in 3 games. So Chris Bryant had a great week. He went 9 for 21 in 5 games with 3 runs scored and 4 extra base hits. I should say 5 extra base hits, 4 doubles, and a homer, his 17th of the year. He had 3 RBI, which was tied for I think 3rd or 4th on the team this week. Javier Baez with a 357 average across the last week. He led the team with 28 at-bats, 10 hits, 4 runs scored, 3 doubles, 2 homers, a team-leading 6 RBI. He did have the second most strikeouts with 7, but that's not anything out of the ordinary with the way Javi plays. Robel Garcia in his first 4 games, 3 of those were started. He went 4 for 11 with 3 runs scored, 3 extra base hits, no doubles, but he does have a triple and 2 homers. He also has 2 walks. He's hitting .364, crazy OPS at 1.552. But yeah, a great first 4 games for Robel Garcia. I also wanted to mention Rizzo is heating up a little bit. He's hitting .304 this last 7 games, going 7 for 23, 3 doubles, a triple as well. His, I think, first or second of the year he had in Pittsburgh in the 11-3 victory. Wilson Contreras also is 6 for 20 in his last 7 games with 4 RBIs. He continues to mash this year. Also, congratulations once again and good luck to Chris Bryant and Wilson Contreras and Javier Baez as they get ready for the All-Star game in Cleveland. It'll be great to see them represent the Cubs this year, even though we've had more in the past. But congratulations, guys, and I hope to see a little bit of action in the All-Star game, maybe a homer out of one of them. But anyways, the only other stat I wanted to mention was Kyle Schwarber and David Bote leading the team in the last 7 games with 10 strikeouts. Both of them struggled. However, Schwarber did have a team-high 6 walks, which is kind of funny. The second most was 3 walks in the last 7 games. So Schwarber was 6 walks, yet a team-leading 10 strikeouts. Schwarber does have 2 doubles, but David Bote's really struggled in his last 7 with a 154 average, and Schwarber at a 136. Jason Hayward, after those hot series in Cincinnati, he cooled down a lot. He's hitting 188 with a slash line of 188, 235, and then slugging of 188. Not great there. Let's dive into the last week of games for the other teams. We can go to the Pirates first, as that one will be easy. They took the first 3 of 4 against the Cubs before dropping the finale. And then they had a series against the Brewers, and they carried on with their winning ways. They lost Friday's game. It was a close one, 7-6, but then they killed the Brewers yesterday by a score of 12-2 and hung on by a score of 6-5 today. As they finished the last week going 5-2, an impressive last week for the Pirates, as they'll be hot coming into Wrigley for Friday, Saturday, Sunday series against the Cubs. All those times will be at 1:20 Central Time start time. And then they'll also have another big series in St. Louis right after that. That'll start on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week after the All-Star break. Let's dive into the Cardinals' schedule now as we see how they've done. And the Cardinals, actually, I remember they were in a very tough stretch. I think they lost 6 straight against the Padres. It was the Athletics and the Padres. But then last Sunday they beat the Padres in the finale. And then they took 2 of 3 in Seattle on Tuesday through Thursday before they dropped 2 of 3 in San Francisco as they end their West Coast trip at the end of the first half. They won the first game 9-4, but then dropped yesterday's game 8-4 and got shut out 1-0 today. I think there was a no-hitter in this one through 6 or 7. I can't exactly remember who was pitching. Jeff Samardzija. Wow. I think, he had a no-hitter through 5 or 6. But they'll play the Diamondbacks at home before a 3-game home series against the Pirates, as their next 6 will be at Busch Stadium to start the second half of the year. Let's dive into the Cincinnati Reds, who have been a hot team recently, as they've really come on to be somehow contenders at the end of the first half in the division. Let's dive into their last week as they played the Brewers. Let's see here. Sorry. Oh, no, never mind. That was the week before. They played the Angels. I'm in the totally wrong week. Sorry. Okay, it was the Brewers. So they played the Brewers to start. So, we lost to them on Sunday. We dropped 2 of 3 in Cincinnati. We lost our 3rd straight series to the Reds. All 3 series this year against the Reds for the Cubs. And then this last week on Monday, they lost to the Brewers by a score of 8-6 and won the next 2. They won 5-4 on Tuesday, and they shut out the Brewers on Wednesday by a score of 3-0. And then they also shut them out again on Thursday, as they won 3 of 4 actually against the Brewers. An impressive series for the Reds. And then they did lose yesterday and today to the Indians. The Indians have been hot, though, as they've got their stuff together as they make a run at the Twins in the second half. But the Reds will be on the road against Colorado starting on Friday through Sunday, and then they'll be at Wrigley to start next week after the Cubs play host to the Reds, or the Pirates to start the second half. They'll play host to the Reds Monday through Wednesday. 2 really big revenge series for the Cubs, as they've really struggled with both those teams, and it's just so happens we start the first 2 series of the second half against them. Let's get into our last week of games, or last team. That's going to be the Milwaukee Brewers. We just went through that they lost the first 3 of 4. Or sorry, not first 3 of 4, but they lost 3 of 4 to the Reds. And then they also lost 2 of 3 to the Pirates, as they went 1-6 in their, 2-5 in their last 7. Bad week for the Brewers, and just much like the Cubs, they've really underperformed this year. But I would not be surprised if we saw really big second halves from both of those teams, as I think they eventually do pull away a little bit in the NL Central. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals got on a little bit of a hot streak, but I think with the Pirates and Reds I wouldn't say the Pirates are necessarily playing over their expectations because they've been injury prone, but definitely the Reds. But I think the Pirates have had a little bit of good luck, considering how bad the Brewers and Cubs have been and how much we've played them already, both our teams. I do expect both the Cubs and Brewers to get hot, but the Brewers, much like the Cubs, are going through a rough patch. So with that, guys, that's going to wrap up the 25th episode of the Ivy Podcast here on July 7th. I look forward to seeing you guys next week for our 26th episode, as the Cubs will get a much-needed rest thanks to the All-Star break. The Home Run Derby will be tomorrow on Monday, as I'm recording this on Sunday night, and then the All-Star game will be on Tuesday, as that's where we'll see Javi, Wilson, and KB in Cleveland before a weekend series at Wrigley against the Pirates starting on Friday. The specific time for next week's podcast will be to be determined, but most likely it'll be out Monday morning or late Sunday night. And as always, go Cubs go, and we hope you have a great start to your next week. And thanks, guys, for stopping by. Hopefully the Cubs can turn it around get a much-needed rest and beat the Pirates and Reds in these next two series